Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa van Dijk, and in today's video I want to talk about acne in a way that makes much more sense to me than only looking at oil, bacteria or clogged pores. Because once you understand acne this way, it changes the whole approach. You stop seeing breakouts as random little skin problems, and you start seeing them as something the body is trying to deal with. Now, when you look up acne, the usual explanation is that acne happens when oil, dead skin cells and bacteria get trapped inside the pore. And on the surface, that makes sense. But that explanation starts in the middle of the story, because it explains what is inside the breakout once the breakout is already forming, but it does not explain why that area became the place where everything started building up. It does not explain why the tissue around the pore became swollen, painful, reactive and inflamed. And it does not explain why the same oil and bacteria can exist on normal skin without causing a problem, but then suddenly turn into acne when the skin environment changes. So in this video, I want to explain my theory about what is happening underneath the skin, why acne forms, and why the solution has to go deeper than just drying out oil or killing bacteria. The simplest way to understand acne now is that acne is a pressure building underneath the skin. And oil, bacteria, dead skin cells and clogged pores still matter because they are part of what happens at the breakout site. But I want you to think about that breakout site almost like a little construction site. When you arrive at a construction site, there are materials, workers, tools, and a lot of activity. So it is easy to think that all of that activity is the whole problem. But then the more important question is why that construction site had to be opened there in the first place. Because a construction site is not built on nothing. It has something underneath it. And if the ground underneath it is unstable, then the whole site becomes unstable too. That is how I think about acne. Before the breakout appears on the skin surface, the tissue underneath has already changed. The ground underneath the pore is no longer calm. It is more swollen, more crowded, more reactive, and more pressurized. So the pore is already sitting on unstable ground before the visible breakout even forms. You could almost picture it like a tiny construction site sitting on an angry sea. The surface may still look normal at first, but underneath the water is rising, the pressure is changing, and the foundation is no longer stable. So once the pore opening becomes blocked, the material underneath has nowhere to go. The oil that normally moves through the pore starts collecting underneath. Dead skin cells add to that. Fluid and swelling add to that. And then the follicle becomes this small space under the skin where more and more material is building up, but the exit is not open enough for it to leave. That is when the breakout starts making sense. A pimple is not just something sitting on the surface. It is the visible point where pressure underneath the skin shows up. And that is why I think pimples can act almost like pressure release points for the skin. The tissue is too loaded, the pore is blocked, and that point becomes the place where the problem pushes through. So when we only ask what is inside the pore, we miss the more important question. The better question is why that area became so crowded and pressured in the first place. Because if the ground underneath is already unstable, then cleaning up the construction site on top will only get you so far. And this is where the bacteria part becomes much easier to understand. Because bacteria are usually talked about like they are the bad guys. Like they are sitting inside the pore creating acne for no reason. But in this theory, bacteria are not the first problem. They are more like the little workers that arrive at the problem area. And yes, that sounds cartoonish, but that is exactly why it works. Because it makes the whole thing easier to picture. Imagine there is this tiny pressure point under the skin. The exit is not working properly, material is building up, and the area is getting more crowded. And then the little workers arrive and basically go, okay, something is happening here. This area is blocked, there is material sitting here, and we need to deal with this. So they start working with what is there. They interact with the oil, they break things down, and they become part of the activity inside that follicle. And when the environment is calm, that system can work normally. If the pore is open, the pressure is low, and the material is moving properly, the workers can do their job and nothing dramatic has to happen. The oil can move through the pore, the bacteria can do their normal work, and the skin can stay calm. But when the pore is blocked and the space is already full, the same process turns into a problem. Now it is like trying to repair something in a tiny room, where the door is closed, more material keeps coming in, the floor is flooding, and the workers are still trying to fix the wall. At that point, the workers are not necessarily evil. The room is too full, the pressure has nowhere to go, and the repair process starts turning into inflammation. So I do not see bacteria as the original enemy. I see them as a part of the response to a pressure point. And this is also why only attacking bacteria or drying out oil does not fully solve the problem. Because if the construction site keeps appearing on the same unstable ground, then cleaning up the mess on top is not enough. You can remove some material, calm the surface, and reduce what is happening at the breakout site. But if the ground underneath is still swollen, crowded, and under pressure, the same type of problem can keep rebuilding again. This is where diet becomes the most important part of the theory. Because if acne is pressure, then a skincare is mostly dealing with the construction site after it has already appeared. It can calm the area, dry things out, reduce bacteria, or help the pore clear. And that can help. But diet is the ground underneath. Diet changes the baseline your skin is built on. So if your diet keeps creating swelling, fluid retention, and pressure from the inside, then the same kind of breakout can keep forming again. The pore becomes the weak point again. The workers come back again. The pressure pushes through again. So the goal is not to fight every single thing on the surface forever. The goal is to calm the ground underneath. Because once the tissue is less swollen, less overloaded, and less pressured, your skin does not have to keep releasing that pressure through breakouts in the same way. That is the part I want you to understand. Acne does not start where you see it. It starts deeper. And the breakout is the place where the pressure finally becomes visible. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!